What are some of the dangers associated with childbirth in general? It might be particular to dangers that might crop up in cases of these kinds of midwives.
Well, without going into that, I'm a layperson, and I don't pretend to be an expert in the medical issues connected with labor and pregnancy. But things can go wrong quickly. That's the thing I want to emphasize. And the other thing that I want to bring up, well, the first danger, actually, is the ignorance of the certified professional midwife. It's always dangerous to put that kind of control and management in the hands of people who are not trained to manage it. And I think it's important that people understand that it's not my opinion that they can't handle it. Certified professional midwives are not eligible to be licensed in the Netherlands, in the UK, in Canada, Australia, or any industrial country because they don't meet the qualifications. Now, what is special about the United States that we're willing to certify people that can't work outside this country except in third world countries? And I think that says something about the licensure. We've got to remember that in Europe and in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, those folks there have college degrees and postgraduate midwifery training just like our certified nurse midwives do in this country. And if you watch the show on TV, Calling All Midwives or Call the Midwife, it's a darling show, those women have all had years of hospital and academic training before they go into practice. Now, some of the dangers connected, I am opposed to the use of the birthing pool, as are most people who are knowledgeable, if for no other reason. I mean, you're told by the midwife that babies won't breathe underwater. That's not true. They have aspiration pneumonias all the time from kids born in birthing pools. Secondarily, without going into specifics, the water in a birthing pool is contaminated. Nobody would stick their head in that pool if they were a functioning adult. So why would you put a baby in that pool and introduce them to life on this planet in that kind of contamination? We talked about the distance from the hospital. When you have an OB crisis, you just simply, I don't care if you're across the street, you're too far away because transport always involves someone arriving, getting the patient onto a gurney or some kind of transfer mechanism, getting them into the hospital, getting a doc on call or somebody who's there to try and clean up the mess that the certified professional midwife allowed to happen. It's not worth the risk. The other thing I want to talk about in terms of the risk connected with certified professional midwives, all, and I mean all of the existing scientific studies, state and national data show that the American planned home birth has triple the risk of neonatal deaths as hospital births with comparable women. Now, I'm not talking about a hospital birth of a 22-week pregnancy. That's probably not going to have a good outcome. But I'm talking about relatively low-risk maternal issues. Triple. That's just too much of a risk. It would have been for me. Studies that claim to show American home birth is safe are poorly done and questionable. More recent work done out of Oregon by a nurse midwife who actually was a proponent of home births demonstrated in Oregon that the rate, I don't have the paper here right now, the rate of birth is of loss of neonates is 6 to 10 times higher than in a hospital setting. You will hear certified professional midwives, and certainly the ones in this area, point to a study published in the British Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology, written by people called Davis and Johnson, and their study is supposed to be the classic largest study of home birth to date. The problem is they weren't independent researchers, and they didn't put that fact forward when they published. Mr. Johnson, Dr. Johnson, describes his profession as Senior Epidemiologist, Surveillance and Risk Assessment Division, Center for Chronic Disease Prevention and Control, Public Health Agency of Canada. He neglected to mention that he holds another position. He is the head of the Midwife Alliance of North America Statistics and Research Committee. In fact, Johnson and Davis have been passionate home birth advocates for many years. And because the study, he hid his particular and personal interest in the outcome of that study, and because the study was very poorly done, it's not credible. And yet when you look on the websites of local midwives, you're going to see them pointing to that study as justification for the safety of home birth. It's not. And I should mention now, Tom and Rodney Hansen have very kindly offered to put up a paper on Not on the Palouse that gives you all the links and all the data you need and a place to start your own research. Don't take my word for it. Don't assume I am the most knowledgeable person about this. I know enough to be concerned, very concerned. But every one of you listening is capable of getting on the internet and looking these things up for yourself. And at the very least, making an informed decision about the risks you're willing to take in order to have your baby in your home.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, that people can continue research after this show. And in fact, Tom actually has agreed to provide a link. I don't have it right now, but for a tape version of the show. Well, eventually he's going to put it on YouTube.
Yes.
And
That's
that
what
will
he
be
said.
announced on, well, I'll announce that next week, and you can also find it on Vision 2020, I'm sure, within the
I'm
next few
certain of
days.
that.
So, yeah. Now, one thing you mentioned before, because I'm curious about whether with midwifery in general, are the delivery procedures the same, or is it a certain type of procedure? Because you were talking about birthing in pools of some sort. Is this the common way that it's done?
It's a service that's offered by local midwives, and certainly nationally too. It's endemic. It's not just here. I think there is some work that has been done that demonstrates that being in water provides some comfort to the laboring mother. But I don't think that there's necessarily any juried articles. And by the way, on the paper that Tom will put up on Not on the Palouse, there are juried articles on things that I'm not going to go into here. It's too technical and probably not of interest to most people, that talk about APGAR, which is a score you give a baby 5 and 10 minutes after delivery, those kinds of things, proving the dangers associated with home birth. Birthing pools, often a laboring mom will want to go sit in the bathtub for a while before she delivers. They're not allowed locally. The hospitals locally don't provide that service. And here's the problem. If you have what essentially is a child's waiting pool, the difficulty in cleaning that up appropriately when you have blood and tissue in that pool, even if you scrub it, even if you hose it off, even if you soak it in alcohol, I would not be inclined to want to use that pool myself. So I think you have a contamination issue, although I can't speak directly to that, but I would be very concerned about that. Another thing, another service that's offered, and this is distasteful, so I'm going to be very careful as I describe this. There are folks locally who cooperate with the local midwives to prepare the placenta after the delivery. They will encapsulate it so that you can take pills of placental tissue after it's been processed. And it's supposed to be a way of increasing health postpartum for the mother. It's baloney, but it's expensive. You're going to pay $350 to have somebody take your placenta home to her kitchen, chop it up into pieces and bake it or whatever she's going to do with it. It can be steamed. There are several methods of preparation. This also is a folklore remedy used by local midwives if a mother bleeds heavily after delivery, and she'll just take a chunk of the placenta and pop it in the patient's mouth. If you doubt this, I've provided a link in the papers that Tom will be putting up, and you can read a birth story that ought to terrify anybody in their right mind. It certainly frightened me, and I'm not trying to be crabby or mean about it. I just am concerned. I'm concerned about these moms. I'm concerned about the babies.
That is Wow.
Yeah.
There is.
I couldn't believe it. I can't believe people wearing jewelry out of dried placenta. This just escapes me. But this is part of kind of the magical thinking way of looking at this process and Mother Earth Goddess and blah, blah, blah. It's just kind of way too far out there for a plain old lady like me.
It is interesting. And
You're such a diplomat.
we're going to take a station break here for a minute. Let me give a weather update, and then we've got some words from our sponsors, and we'll listen to a little bit of music, and then maybe if you have time to stick around, we can probe. I'm kind of interested about what kinds of people want to be midwives. I mean, what would make somebody go into this occupation, and so maybe you can.
I've got some thoughts about that too. I'd like to share.
All right, that sounds pretty good.